Well, for more on this, we'll cross now to François Picard, who is standing by in Berlin for us. François, the real election begins the day after Election Day in Germany, in the sense that the parties are now tasked with solidifying their platforms and building a coalition. But there is, of course, a major change now, which is the CDU plunging to historic lows. How big of a shift do you think that these elections represent?
It's a big shift since you've had 16 years of Angela Merkel, who, if the coalition talks drag on, will become the longest-serving chancellor in German history. So it's definitely Germany waking up and going to work and to school this Monday morning with that era of uncertainty that's beginning, as you mentioned. The change is perhaps a nuance since Olaf Scholz has branded himself as a safe pair of hands. In his speech before Party Faithful at SPD headquarters Sunday night, he said, "We know how to govern." And it was surprising to hear many people take a page out of the Angela Merkel playbook. In these uncertain times, he said, we're the ones who can keep a steady ship. He's very moderate, but it's uncertainty because even though the Social Democrats who've been in coalition are a known entity, what's not for Germany is a three-way coalition. It was 4:30 a.m. when the first results, when the official provisional tally came in. Most of the papers had already gone to bed. This one hedging its bets like everyone, saying it's neck and neck. But you see on the cover a smiling Olaf Scholz and a frowning Armin Laschet of the CDU.
Unsurprising, François, that Olaf Scholz is smiling. Do you think that the SPD is celebrating this now as an all-out victory?
It's all a question now of how you negotiate. You said how a new race begins. Well, in Germany, you sit down and you hash it out. First over the party platform, then over who gets to be in the cabinet. Now, the most likely scenario with the far left dropping to below the 5% threshold, which means they're out of the picture, essentially, for any coalition government, is they're going to have to look to the left to the Greens, who did very well as well, plus 5%, just like the SPD, and to the right to the Free Democrats, the liberals who are pro-Europe, but also fiscal hawks. So there'll be big clashes between, on the one hand, the FDP, on the other hand, the Greens, if they want to form, because it's color-coded, the parties, what they call here a traffic light coalition, red, green, yellow.
And you mentioned some of the several parties that are going to be involved in those important coalition discussions, François. One of those parties that's absent, of course, is the AfD. All major parties have excluded them from coalition negotiations, and though they got less support than they did in 2017, they still do have a solid 10% of the vote. What does this mean for them?
Interesting how the AfD has pivoted. Last general election, it was all about being anti-immigration. This time, the speech shifted towards being anti-vax and echoing some of the things we heard from the far right and Donald Trump in the United States about how there shouldn't be vaccine passports. And yeah, they had a setback, a minor one. They dropped between 1 and 2 percentage points when the final tally is in. The far right is suffering, the far left suffering, and of course the Christian Democrats, who have their worst score since World War II, but the Christian Democrats who still have a shot. If ever Olaf Scholz can't get the Greens and the Liberals to agree, well, then it will be what they call here a Jamaica coalition. Black, green, yellow, that could be a possibility. So while the Christian Democrats are down and probably out, it's too early to say.
Well, sounds like a lot of uncertainty there, as you suggest. François Picard in Berlin, thank you so much for that latest update.